Hello everyone, this is Recap Revelations. Today we're entering the fascinating world of the film Lethal Weapon 2. Warning, fresh spoilers ahead. Hold on tight, keep an eye out for the exciting adventure, and enjoy the ride. Our story begins in the midst of an automobile chase through downtown Los Angeles' 4th Street Tunnel. The known partners in the homicide branch of the Los Angeles Police Department, Martin Riggs and Roger Murtaugh, are pursuing a red BMW while their colleagues approach the vehicle from the other side. There may have been a drug raid. The police officers at the precinct station, listening in with their chief, are placing wagers on how the pursuit will end. Beside the red BMW, a blue automobile with more evil people gets up. The police are able to hear the criminals speaking in a foreign language since they are equipped with radios. Leaning out of the window, a man in the passenger seat of the blue automobile fires a shotgun blast through Murtaugh's station wagon windshield. Riggs removes the broken windshield with a kick. They are informed that bullets have been fired by the female police dispatcher. Sarcastically, Riggs thanks her for alerting him. When a police cruiser had to swerve to avoid colliding head-on with a camper trailer, it hits the propane tank and bursts into flames. The red and blue cars drifted off in separate directions. Murtaugh and Riggs are still after the red vehicle. The red car's driver shifts onto a sidewalk, forcing Murtaugh to halt due to oncoming traffic. Riggs leaps from the vehicle and speeds past every stopped vehicle in the road, managing to catch up to the red vehicle. With his gun out, Riggs charges onto the bonnet of the red BMW and yells at the driver to show driver's license and proof of insurance. As the car lurches to the left, Riggs falls off. Before Riggs can fire back, the driver stops, lifts an automatic weapon, squeezes off a few rounds, and races away once more. A little uphill, Riggs charges after the BMW once more. When Murtaugh comes up to Riggs, he orders him into the vehicle. Roger gets pushed over by Riggs, who is determined to drive. Roger shifts, but not before cautioning Riggs not to even damage the vehicle. As they approach a bridge with heavy traffic, Riggs raises the car's left wheels to the curb, scraping the station wagon's side all the way along. As it gets closer to an elevated crossroads where all lanes are blocked, the blue automobile spins out. After jumping out, two men open fire on the officers. The cops open fire again. The evil guys hop in and the helicopter takes off from beneath the elevated section of the road. As this is going on, the BMW loses control, crashes through a storefront window, and comes to rest upside down. Riggs and Murtaugh are still chasing the vehicle. A police cruiser blocks Riggs and Murtaugh's path, causing them to momentarily stop, but they quickly approach the scene of the collision. The BMW's driver has vanished. Upon hearing a disturbance, Riggs opens the trunk, believing the person responsible could be inside. Hundreds of South African Krugerrands fly out. Roger and Trish are surprised in their bedroom when four hooded guys burst into their house and use duct tape to bind their mouths and limbs. Peter, one of the men, warns Roger that if he and his group continue with the Krugerrand case, his family would be in danger. The kids run into the bedroom and free them once the males have left. The following day, Roger informs Riggs of what transpired and that he had temporarily moved Trish and the children in with a relative. Captain Murphy, Murtaugh's supervisor, thinks that following the attack in his house, he could use a simpler assignment, so he assigns the two of them to guard a prominent witness in a federal narcotics case. Leo Getz is the witness, and it should only take 2 or 3 days for federal officials to come pick him up. Murphy brushes off Murtaugh and Riggs' criticism that the assignment is a joke. To connect up with Getz, Riggs and Murtaugh head to the Marriott Hotel. They visit Getz in his 6th-floor room after Riggs pretends to be a hotel employee and flirts with a few women in the hotel's jacuzzi. Leo is forced to relocate to the smaller room after Riggs and Murtaugh take over the larger bedroom. Leo concludes that they are teasing him with a game of bad cop, bad policeman. A waiter who comes to deliver Leo's lunch turns out to be a hitman who is trying to shoot Leo with a weapon he had hidden in the cart. Leo seizes the hitman's arm, deterring him just long enough for Riggs to charge headlong into them. Leo, the hitman, and he are thrown through the room's window and into the swimming pool 6 stories below as a result of the force of his attack. When Riggs starts beating Leo in the face, thinking he is the hitman manages to get away. Following their exit from the water, Riggs presses for information about what Leo saw that might make someone want to kill him. When Leo informs them that he has laundered $500 million in proceeds from illegal drugs, Riggs and Roger are astounded. Despite the fact that the residents did not have a pool, he takes some equipment and poses as a pool cleaner. 2 men approach him, and he handcuffs and disables them right away before more people in the house become drawn to the fighting and start firing. The man who had attempted to assassinate Leo while posing as a waiter at the hotel is one of the individuals inside the house. Stealing a tow truck on the street, he flees. After pursuing and jumping on the car that is being towed, Riggs approaches the tow truck and fights with the driver. Leo and Murtaugh hop into the station wagon and pursue. Riggs loses his balance during the ensuing frenzied chase and struggle, almost falling off the tow truck and dropping his gun in the process. Leo leaps out of the car as Murtaugh stops it and takes Riggs' rifle. The driver abruptly cuts off, sending Riggs flying over the top of the tow truck's cab, but he manages to grab onto the bumper winch and hang on. The truck driver had to brake suddenly to avoid oncoming traffic, causing Riggs to lose his balance and fall onto the road. Murtaugh is following too closely to stop in time, and as a result, he rear-ends the car that is being towed, sending it flying over the tow truck and straight into a tiny pickup that is approaching from the opposite direction. The tiny pickup's surfboard breaks loose and crashes into the tow truck's windshield, instantly killing the driver. When Riggs and Murtaugh return to the stilted home with additional members of their squad, they see men taking boxes out of the house. The males are told to stop by the cops. Since Peter is the Minister of Diplomatic Affairs at the South African Consulate in Los Angeles, and Rudd is the Minister of Diplomatic Affairs, they both show up and demand that the police leave the area since it is South African property. He displays the paperwork to them. Rudd claims that because of the Diplomatic Relations Act, he and his people are shielded from U.S. laws, cannot be held for interrogation, and most definitely cannot be arrested. Just as Riggs and the other cops are pulling out, a stunning woman named Rika van den Haas drives up. She drops a briefcase as she exits, and Riggs opens the door for her. She and Riggs exchange glances while bending over to retrieve the briefcase. Leo and Riggs head straight to Roger's house, where Riggs pulls open the front door and draws his gun. Leo rushes around to cover the back door after declaring he will do so. Upstairs, with his legs numb and perspiration on his forehead, Riggs discovers Murtaugh seated on his toilet. Murtaugh had to sit there like that all night, he recalls Riggs, since he had been reading his copy of Saltwater Sportsman magazine and relaxing when he looked at the roll of toilet paper with a shocking message. In order to verify that there was a bomb back there with a C4 explosive, Riggs crawls behind the toilet and looks around. Roger understands they must call the bomb squad, even though he doesn't want to. Murtaugh requests that Riggs keep the incident quiet and not use the police band, but reporters and the fire department show up, making a major spectacle on the street. The police psychiatrist also shows up, but she leaves upon seeing Murtaugh using the restroom. Supervising the bomb team, Jarvis wants Murtaugh to jump into the briefcase to Rudd because it can resist the blast. Secretary. Liquid nitrogen was applied to the device by Jarvis, and he starts to flirt with her, delaying the detonation for a few seconds and allowing Roger to enter the tub. Once everyone has left the bathroom, leaving only Riggs and Murtaugh, the two spend a relatively silent moment of affection because they both know they will likely die soon. Reaching into the bathtub, Riggs seizes Murtaugh's hands. After they count to 3, they decide that Riggs will drag Roger into the cast iron tub and cover them with the bomb blanket. After Riggs counts, they move. Roger and Martin are shocked that they both survived the enormous explosion that sent the fully functional toilet flying across the yard and onto the Murtaugh station wagon's windshield, aside from severe ear pain. When Leo opens the show the following day, he goes up to a man who works at the immigration counter of the South African Consulate. He informs him that he needs assistance persuading his friend Alphonse not to travel to South Africa. Leo calls in and says his pal is there. It's Murtaugh. The consular staff member instantly concurs with Leo that Alphonse shouldn't go to South Africa upon seeing the black Alphonse. Then, Murdaugh goes on a rant about how apartheid is wrong and how the people must end it. Riggs manages to slip into the building and into Rudd's office during the diversionary disruption. As Rudd, Peter, and 4 other men enter the office, he takes a piece of paper from a notepad on the desk and pockets it. As they streamed in, Riggs was able to conceal behind the door. He then draws attention to himself by closing it. Riggs throws 2 of Rudd's men to the ground as he orders them to show him to the street. He then draws his revolver and tells the other guys to keep their hands off their weapons. He threatens to fuck their ass and send Rudd home with their balls in a sling if he and his followers don't fold up their tent and get the hell out of the United States. Rudd's men harass Leo in the meantime, and they take Leo and Murtaugh's car and flee. One by one, 2 more men attack Roger inside his home. Using the nail gun, he kills the first man by driving a nail through his forehead. He then uses the nail gun to drive 3 nails into the second man's chest. Sam interrupts Riggs and Rika's moment of passion by barging in through the dog door and sticking his head through. After listening intently for a short while, Riggs gets the feeling that something is wrong and tells Rika to get dressed. Riggs notices 2 helicopters approaching as he peers out the window. Just as automatic weapon fire begins to tear apart the trailer's walls, he orders Rika to get down on the ground. When the gunmen stop to reload, Riggs yells for Rika to hurry to his truck as he and Rika flee via the doggy door. After one of the helicopters lands and 4 men get out to continue firing into the trailer, Riggs approaches one of them from behind and uses the dead guy's weapon to kill the other shooter by causing him to hit his own man in the chest. Then he kills the helicopter pilot and the other 2 shooters by jumping on top of his trailer. When the second helicopter arrives, Riggs makes his way to his pickup. Rika lashes out at him, demanding to know who those individuals are, and he dives in with her. After expressing his ignorance and asking her what she plans to do on Saturday, Riggs shifts the vehicle into drive and drives off. He has to take his time to fire back at the second chopper, striking at least 1 man inside and causing it to turn away as he slows down to wait for Sam, who is racing to catch up. Taking Rika home is Riggs. Since his place is completely booked, she consents to let him stay with her. With the promise to come back later, he sends her on her way to her apartment, but Peter ambushes him and knocks him unconscious as he's getting into his vehicle. When Riggs comes to, he finds himself face to face with Peter on a pier, wrapped in chains and a tarpaulin. Peter informs Riggs that he was hired to kill Riggs 4 years prior, while Riggs was dealing drugs in Long Beach and was unknowingly getting close to nailing Rudd. Vicky, Riggs's wife, was the one he ambushed in the automobile, not Riggs himself. He informs Riggs that her demise was somewhat delayed. When Riggs lunges at him, he is restrained and thrown into the water close to the pier. He releases himself from his shackles by performing his shoulder dislocation method. He sees Rika, who was earlier tossed into the river and drowned, as he turns to begin his ascent to the surface. Gasping for breath, Riggs comes to the surface and climbs out of the water, grabbing a short length of chain that is hanging over a tiny boat motor. The 2 men, still up on the pier, are ambushed by him. He smashes the second one's skull through a car window, snapping its neck, and then slams his neck between the car door and the door jamb several times. After shoving his shoulder back into position, Riggs dives in to collect Rika's body and carries her to the beach. Sam observes in silence as Riggs mournfully strolls along the shoreline while toting Rika's body. After a while, Riggs phones Roger and informs his partner that Vicky and Rika have been killed. He informs Murtaugh that, as of right now, he is no longer an officer, that this is personal, and that he is after Rudd, Peter, and the others. Roger knows he is probably wasting his breath, but he makes a hopeless attempt to convince Riggs out of doing anything reckless. Silently removing his own badge, he heads to the house on stilts to intercept Riggs. One of Peter's guys is beating Leo across the face while he is imprisoned inside the house on stilts. He won't discuss anything about how he took their money with Vorstedt. Just past the home, on the road, Roger stops Riggs. He should not try to persuade Riggs out of it. All Roger asks is whether Riggs has a plan. He is instructed by Riggs to circle to the front of the house, wait for his signal, then charge in and begin firing. Riggs advises Roger to exercise caution around Leo after learning that he is inside. When Roger inquires about the signal, Riggs responds that he will know when it occurs. Riggs attaches the other end of a steel cable around his rear axle and wraps it around one of the house's steel support stilts. Then he begins to violently thrust the vehicle forward repeatedly, causing the home to tremble as he jerks the support structure loose. Roger shoots 2 assailants from the exterior of the house, then dashes inside to free Leo in time to see the structure collapse. In celebration, Riggs leaps out of his truck and starts to bounce up and down. Upon his return to Roger and Leo is instructed to go back to the police station and bide his time until the federal marshal arrives. Until Murtaugh tells him he can use the siren on the way there, he is hesitant to do that. Leo hugs Riggs and Murtaugh before heading out. Murtaugh and Riggs make their way to the docks to find the Alba Varden, a cargo ship. It is planned to sail for South Africa, Murtaugh informs Riggs. When they locate the ship, they observe 3 guys waiting to load a container next to it. They surprise the men, seize their guns, and force entry into the container to look around. They discover Rudd's Mercedes vehicle inside, along with several pallets filled to the brim with shrink-wrapped US dollars in various denominations, probably hundreds of millions. Murtaugh takes out several $1,000 banknotes, thinking that he could simply use them to finance his children's college tuition. Riggs advises him to keep it, but Murtaugh changes his mind and sets it aside. Abruptly, the exterior of the container doors are secured and shut. Rudd orders the container to be loaded onto the Alba Varden after determining that Riggs and Murtaugh can simply travel with them to South Africa. Riggs devises a scheme. The container stops right over the ship, and then the doors fly open, sending the Mercedes hurtling out of it along with hundreds of bills. The bills fly into the ocean and the ship's hold as the automobile bursts into a ball of fire. After observing and being shocked, Rudd calmly gives the order to his soldiers to ensure that Riggs and Murtaugh dead. Riggs and Murtaugh grab ropes in preparation to rappel down into the ship's hold as Rudd's men begin shooting down into the ocean. Murtaugh is hesitant a little bit and wants Riggs to lead the way, but Riggs nudges Roger over the brink and follows. As he falls, Riggs takes down 2 of the bad men. Once aboard, Riggs murders 2 additional guys. About 15 shots are fired at the second man by Riggs, who yells the names of Vicky and Rico while he is shooting. Roger climbs onto the deck. Unexpectedly, Riggs, who is still in the hold, takes a knife to his right calf. Peter threw it, then lunged forward, kicking Riggs in the head and torso with savage roundhouse kicks. While Riggs finally gathers enough strength to begin retaliating against Peter, Roger takes out another assailant. Peter snatches the knife from Riggs's calf and twists it. With a cry of pain, Riggs wrenches the knife and Peter's hand off his leg. Riggs drives the knife into Peter's chest during the subsequent struggle for it and then jerks it sharply upward. Riggs turns and leaves after observing Peter fall to the deck and noticing the control for the container's hoist. Peter, who is still alive, takes a gun from a holster on his lower thigh and is about to fire Riggs when Riggs reaches out and presses a button, causing the container that is positioned far above to fall and crush Peter. With a smile, Riggs starts to move away. Murtaugh looks over an upper deck and sees Riggs. After confirming that he's okay, Rudd emerges out of nowhere on deck and shoots at Riggs, striking him 2 or 3 times. Then Roger yells for Rudd to put down his gun. Rudd displays his diplomatic ID from South Africa. He brings up his diplomatic immunity to Roger. Roger takes a moment before shoving Rudd in the forehead and stating that it has just been revoked. Fearing Riggs is dead, Murtaugh rushes down the ladder and over to him. Roger begins to yell at him, telling him to breathe again. Unexpectedly, Riggs moves and asks Murtaugh to take his cigarettes out of his pocket. Riggs instructs Murtaugh to discard the pack of smokes after he gets it. When Riggs asks Murtaugh what happened to Rudd and the others, he responds that the bad people have been decaffeinated. Sirens blare in the background as the 2 burst into giggles, Riggs lamenting that laughing hurts. After the story concludes, the two friends continue to joke and laugh. Lethal Weapon 2 is a thrilling and well-balanced action film that successfully blends intense sequences with humor and character development. The chemistry between Mel Gibson and Danny Glover remains a highlight, and the addition of Joe Pesci's character adds a comedic element to the mix. The film's exploration of friendship, loyalty, and justice, combined with its memorable action sequences and soundtrack, makes it a standout entry in the action genre. If you enjoyed this recap from Recap Revelations, be sure to subscribe for a continuous stream of similar videos. Your support means the world to us, so don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks a million for tuning in.